what are the packing instructions. And from that packing instructions, we know to now navigate ourselves to part 4.1.4 of the code book so that we can find what that packing instruction is actually indicating to us. We also know because the packing instruction per se, all right? For instance, I'm going to share my screen because I just want to reiterate this portion again, all right? Which is the packing instructions. And I'm going to go to a few of them so we can look at them again together, all right? Now we know that these packing instructions, for instance, P001 and this one, P002, these are common packing instructions. And if you have the code book, you will see as you sift through all the DGLs that are there in the volume 2, many times if you open any page, you're bound to find a P001 or a P002 without fail. You will definitely stumble upon one, right? Meaning to say that this is actually very common packing instructions, these two. This one is specifically for liquids, although they indicate the kilograms you see in the corner here, because you might say, okay, liquids, but why are they indicating kilograms here? All right, so these are like for very dense substances. So very dense substances, maybe they're not concerned about the liter. That means in terms of how much capacity in terms of liter. They are concerned in terms of its weight, because the weight is usually heavier than the volume of these kind of substance. So that's why when you look at P001, despite it showing you in brackets that it is for liquids, you also see calculations or indications of capacity allowances in kilograms. And what is interesting about P001 is that you can also see, because in column number 8, when we speak about the types of packages that are in that column number 8, the packages there, in order to fall in that so-called category of number 8, has to be packages that are either in single packaging form. Generally, these are packages that are packed into containers. All right, they are either packed into containers or they are stored onto general cargo ships, meaning to say that they are of such big size that they cannot fit into a container, or maybe because for that leg of transport, there are more general cargo ships than container ships plying that port. So you can even use, put these kind of packaged dangerous goods onto general cargo ships. So those kind of packages come in column number 8. And so which means to say that there are generally 3 levels of packaging there. The single type of packaging, which are these drums and such, and jerry cans. Why are they called single? Because we don't put them into any outer package, meaning to say they are not in a carton box or anything. If anything, we pelletize them. We put them on the pellet, and then the minute we shrink wrap them on a pellet, of course, you know that it then becomes an overpack, and then we put them into containers. But there is no other protection than the product that is packed in the receptacle and the first layer of its packaging. Whereas when you come to combination packaging, so you see P001 has got single and has combination packaging. And what the P001 is indicating is here is the inner receptacle. So you can make it out of any material, and depending on the material that the inner package is made out of, it has to contain a maximum of this amount. All right. Also in part 4, I showed you certain parts may seem kind of dry when we were going through yesterday, but they were interesting bits, because what they were trying to explain to you was that if, for instance, see all these packagings that we see in column 8, in column 10, and of course column 13. So let's take 8 and 10, because both of these go into containers. IBCs also are stuffed into containers. So 8 and 10, these columns, we see that the code prescribes that they have to follow a certain construction requirement. And then the code also prescribes that after they have been constructed, they must then go for performance testing, which is actually the part 6 that I will be touching on. Now, the reason why you notice that from part 4 yesterday, I hooked on to part 6 because they're actually interconnected. Part 5 is consignment procedures. It just comes in between and bothers the whole train of thought. So that's why we do that later. We connect the construction and testing of packages together with 4. So yesterday when we were doing part 4 and I was sharing parts of our code book on the screen with you, they mentioned that inner packages do not need to go for performance tests, that only outer packages needed to, but there was a condition to that. The condition to that was that the inner packages that contain 5 liters or 5 kg and less need not go for performance tests. But if it is above that amount, then it has to go for its own performance test. And that also is relevant to certain classes, meaning these are certain conditions that come in. So you can see in part 4 the connection that comes to part 6. However, everything that is in the outer package, the drum, the box, the jerry cans, and the bags, actually, you don't see bags here because this is the packing instruction for liquids, so you won't see bags here. But all of these have to be constructed following the construction information given in part 4, and then prototypes are sent for performance tests in order to obtain the certification so that you can then use the UN packing approval code on these packages. All right. So when you look at it also, you can see that the instructions are given to you based on packing groups. That is why when I tested with a question on one of the UN numbers just now asking whether the shipper could use a single type steel drum with a removable head, because that substance fell under packing group 1 despite being in P001 instruction. It indicated right here that for PG1, you cannot use steel removable drums, steel removable head drums. It's prohibited. And it indicates to you, for instance, if it is allowed, like for instance, if the shipper used a non-removable head drum, the shipper could have filled that drum up to 250 liters. So it gives you that allowance. And we also see here for composite packages. All right, composite packages are those packages where the inner and outer are connected to each other. That means you can't remove the inner from the outer. So this information indicates to you how much you can fill by using these kind of composite packaging. So composite packages, jerry cans, drums, and when I take you to P002, you will also see bags, yeah, indicated here. So all of these things go for performance test. But coming back to this, I also want to draw your attention to well, IBCs. We took a look at it yesterday. All right. What the IBC is indicating to us is what types of IBCs can be used. And for those of you, say, who have forgotten in terms of the types of IBCs, let me just refresh your knowledge on them by showing you some examples so that you can relate to these numbers with the pictures, because usually that makes more sense to all of us, right? So let me just open this 1GA portion of our part 4 just to show you these examples. Open Sesame. It takes a while, but it's opening. Okay, so this is the packages that are in column number 8. Yeah, so you see the 1A2, this is the 1A1, 3H1 for jerry cans, 3A1. So the alphabet is the material, the number is the package. Yeah, 1 is for drum, 3 is for jerry cans, A is for steel, H is for plastic, G is for fiberboard, 4 is for boxes. Yeah, so again A, because this is for a box, A, a steel box. Bags are always 5, and this is plastic, so H is always the alphabet used for plastic. Yeah, so just so you can see. And then when we come to LPs, LP instructions, I wanted to show you the type of IBCs. There you go. These are the types. So when you see 11, right, these are, you see stainless steel IBCs for solids. 13 are flexible IBCs. Okay. 31 is specifically for liquid cargoes, the types of IBCs. Right. So when you see IBCs, you must remember the types that you see in the instruction when they indicate to you in, where am I? Where is our instructions? Right here. When we indicate to you in the instructions 11, so this is for solid cargoes. Yeah, solid, solid, solid. This is liquid 31, 31, 31. All right, so apparently you can use either one of this for if a UN number gets an IBC 04 as an instruction. So now we move on to part 6, right? And in part 6, I hope you remember the stuff that you learned in GA. If you don't, I can, reshare that part with you. But before I start running the notes, I just want to show you how the code looks like in part 6 for those of you who do not have the code book. Yeah, how it begins and what is indicated here. So first, of course, every chapter of the code will start with giving you its general provisions and its applicability. So in this, it'll tell you that the provisions of this chapter doesn't apply for radioactive substances. And you see, these provisions do not apply to pressure receptacles, packages containing radioactive material, packages whose net mass exceed 400 kgs, and packages for liquids that exceed 450 liters, because this is specific to column number 8 we're talking about, all right? And packaging for infectious substances of 6.2 under category A, which is the very dangerous category. The provisions for packaging in 614 are based on packaging currently used in order to take into account progress in science and technology. There is no objection to the use of packagings having specifications that are different from 6.1.4. So 6.1.4, we can just go here straight away. And 6.1.4 indicates to you what these packagings are. So when you see a 1A1 or a 1A2, right? These are for your steel drums. One is a non-removable head and one is a removable head. And then they tell you the body and head shall be constructed of steel sheet of suitable type and adequate thickness in relation to the capacity of the drum and the intended use. For carbon steel, drum suitable steels are identified and they give you the ISO standards. For carbon steel drums below 1 liter, and then they indicate the standards that should be used. Then they talk about the body seam of drums that are intended to contain more than 40 liters of liquid. They say should be welded. And they also talk about for solid cargoes. And they talk about the chimes. So generally what they're doing here is talking to you about the construction of these drums, right? And talking about their maximum capacities and their maximum net masses of these drums. and they go see from one, then the different the different materials that are used. So every type of packaging that you see in your P001 is explained in detail right here. Right, everything is explained in full detail, the capacities, the inner receptacles for these composite packages, and what they should have, all that is indicated here. So they say these are for those packages, all of them in column number 8. In order to take into account the progress in science, this says if you have any specifications that are different from what we have seen just now, provided that they are equally effective, acceptable by the competent authority. So if your package is not listed here, you must get your CA approval, and there would be some form of test methods that would be applied for that package to be used for dangerous goods. Every package intended to contain liquids shall successfully undergo a suitable leak-proofness test. So then here they talk about the different types of tests that these packages have to undergo. All right, at this part of the code. So it starts with that, and then it talks about the codes that are designating. Meaning to say, they say the code for designating the types of packages consists of, first, they say the code is of an Arabic numerical. So, which means our numbers, alphanumeric, that's why we call it that. Anyway, those numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that is now talking about the type of package that it is describing. And then one or more capital letters in Latin, that means the alphabets, the ABCD, that is indicating what the packaging is made out of. And then another numeral, another numeric that is used. Some packages will have a numeric after the alphabet. So the numeric after the alphabet is actually talking about a subcategory. In the cases of drums, you have removable and non-removable heads. In the case of bags, you may have inner liners or waterproof liners or whatnot. So these are the subcategories. And then they say in the case of composite packaging, 2 capital letters in Latin characters shall be used in sequence and in the second position of the code. The first indicates the material of the inner receptacle and the second of the outer. So when you look at composite packaging, it always would be a number with an alphabet, 2 alphabets indicating the first one that you see will indicate the inner receptacle. The second alphabet you see will indicate the outer receptacle's material that it's. So whenever it's an alphabet, it's about materials. Whenever it's a number, it's about packages. In the case of combination packaging, only the code number for the outer package will be indicated or will be used. And then you have these additional letters that might appear in a UN packing approval code, which is T, V, W. And they may follow the packaging code. When the T comes in, it signifies that the package is actually a salvage package. So a salvage package, you don't please get your mind all buggled up with this information unless you are a CFS. And your CFS facilities is also consolidating non-DG and DG that comes from another country and going to another country. Because only in that instance you may have the need to use a salvage package if one of the packages have been damaged. Otherwise, damaged packaging of DG should never be packed into a container, right? So don't concern yourself with this unless the situation occurs. The letter V signifies special packaging that conforms to this provision indicated here. This provision is the tests, okay? And in terms of its thickness, the letter W signifies that the packaging, although of the same type, that means whenever W is used, it may have gone through a different form of a test, which is not prescribed as a UN test per se, but it is of the same stringency and the package is of the same specifications as prescribed by the UN test. So that's when the W will be used. All right. So now let's run through the slide for the case of running through the slide. Okay. And the whole purpose of running through the slide is just to refresh our knowledge in this again. All right, so these are the standard tests that a package would go through. Now I'm also wondering if you can see my whiteboard. I think you can, right? The only thing is I have to make sure that whatever I write it big enough for you to see. I'm going to pull my desk closer to me and the camera closer. So just bear with me for a little bit so we get closer to the whiteboard. So whenever a package is sent for performance tests, so I'm actually repeating some bits of GA just to remind you again, and maybe if any of you missed it before, we can do this again so that you can remember again, all right, or learn it again. So assuming we're going to take a couple of UN numbers here, and in these couple of UN numbers, hang on, I'm going to show you some, all right. These UN numbers all have the same packing instruction. So just give me a sec, let me take you to the code. And from the code, I will move to the DGL. I'm going to randomly pick a UN number. I'm going to take 2801. Okay. So let me show it to all of you. 2801 packing group 3, which is die. Okay. So UN 2801 PG3. And when I look at column number 8 for this, I see a P001. So I'm really happy. I'm going to put that down on the board. All right. Yeah, I hope you can see it. If you cannot tell me, enable your mics and tell me. And assuming I want to pack, sorry, not pack, assuming I also produce, I'm also a manufacturer of turpentine. You know what is turpentine? Turpentine is used to thin paint, sometimes to even clean paint. Somebody can get me the UN number of turpentine, I will be very happy. That would test your checking. I found it already, too late. 1299. So UN 1299. And then I look at column number 8. Again, I'm very happy. What PG is this? This is a PG3. All right, not so great, but never mind. P001. And I'm not done yet. I still have a few products that I produce. Okay. And the other product that I produce is a UN 2241. 2241, yes. So let's go to 2241. Where are you, 2241? There you go. And 2241 happens to be a PG2.
PG2.
Correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
2241 PG2, also P001. And I'm not done. Also a 2240. This is the other product that I produce as well, a 2240. And when I look at my 2240, no, 2240 is a PG1, right?
Yeah.
But all of them share the same packing instruction. Am I right? All these 4 UN numbers share the same packing instruction. Let me bring this thing closer. I'm going to move it a bit so it's closer to the whiteboard. Come closer, closer. Oh, coffee moving. So I'm just going to show the whiteboard only. You won't see me. You will see my whiteboard. Okay. Now all these 3, 2801, 1299. I'm going to move my chair. 1299, right? 2241, 2240. All three of these ones have, all four of these have the same packing instruction, but they have different packing groups. However, I am this one manufacturer that manufactures all of this. And I want to use drums, and I want to use steel non-removable head drums. So this is the 1A1 drums. When I send the drums for performance tests, of course, I as a manufacturer will definitely not be the drum manufacturer. So I will contact the drum manufacturer. And when I give the drum manufacturer these details and these details and these details, they generally know. All right, the ones that are making drums, they already know. So they will prepare the drums based on the specifications for indicated, because this P001 and all that I showed you, all those are already listed under the 1A1 in part 6 of the code, right? Which I just showed it to you on your screen. So when the drum manufacturer prepares, they prepare prototypes. That means not in many large quantities, small quantities. And when they prepare these prototypes, what happens is, when they prepare these prototypes, what happens is they then take these drums to Sirim and they get these drums tested. So as a manufacturer, I will communicate to the drum manufacturer that when they send the drums for testing to Sirim, please indicate to Sirim that the drums have to be tested for PG3, PG2, and PG1, because I want to use them for either PG, because these 4 UN number products have multiple packing groups. What happens is, now in these 3 PGs, which is the most dangerous PG? Somebody
P1.
can PG1. And because it's the most dangerous PG, PG1, all the tests that are commonly done, there are 4 basic tests, right? So in these 4, can somebody name the 4 basic tests for me, just so I know you remember this? The 4 basic tests.
Hydraulic test.
Hydraulic drop. Let's take the most common thing that will happen, a drop.
Leak
Ah,
proofness.
leak proofness, hydraulic pressure, and stack test if the package is meant for stacking. So when this is communicated to Sirim to test for all 3 PGs, of course, the most restrictive, the most dangerous, the most stringent tests will be done. And when these drums have passed the test, that means they go through on the most stringent for PG 1, 2, and 3. All right, what will happen is when they pass the test, they are then allowed to use the alphabet. Oh, your red color not working. They are allowed to use the alphabet X in their UN packing approval code, because the alphabet X is communicating that this 1A1 drum was tested for PG 1, 2, and 3. If, for instance, I didn't have this product, that means I didn't have 2240. I just had 2241 and I had this 3 other UN numbers. So when I tell the drum manufacturer to send it for testing, this time I tell the guy, please test it for PG2 and 3. Now, when it passes the test, then it'll obtain a Y. So it will show that the 1A1 drum was tested for PG2 and 3. So the same would apply if it was only 1 PG, then the 1A1 drum will show a Z, because the Z means only PG3 it was tested for. So PG3 means the least stringent test. Okay, so the UN packing approval code communicates this information And when we see what it's communicating to us, it's not just telling us about now let's go back here. It's not just telling us about the material that the drum is made out of, but it's also communicating to us on the packing groups that it was tested for. So here you see the communication of the packing groups will define the stringency of the performance tests that are done onto these drums. Onto the example I gave you is drum. So it could be any type of package. All right, and then in addition to that, the UN packing approval code also indicates to you the year that it was manufactured. And please do not forget the relative density information. All right. Now, relative densities will always occur in liquid cargoes because you want to relate the density of the liquid to its volume, right? If it is very dense, then you will show it would definitely be more than 1.1. It'll be 1.3, 1.4, 1.5. And so whenever you see a packing approval code for liquid cargoes in a drum, just to remind you guys again, right? It will look like this. Hang on, yeah. So it would be a 1, say A1, and then you'll see an X 1.5, and then you will see 160, and assuming 12 MY, and then some number at the end there. Okay, so this now is telling you that this steel drum, this drum that is steel, that is a non-removable head type, was tested for PG 1, 2, and 3 for substances that have a relative density of 1.5. If the relative density is 1.2 and below, you won't see anything here. It'll just show either X, Y, or Z because it's like water, right? Water is 1.1. The volume and weight of water, 1 liter equals to 1 kg. Whereas, so anything that is 1.2 and below, no point mentioning it. But it is only when it's denser than, very denser than 1.2 higher, then it will be indicated. So when it comes to liquid cargo, you will have this density information. So the density information is now just telling you about the denseness of the liquid, but you know that a lot of dangerous goods, the liquids, when they heat up, they form into gases, and then these gases start expanding. So which means to say that whatever packaging that is used for this kind of substances has to be tested for a certain amount of pressure that will build up during transit. They use something called vapor pressure information in the SDS in section 9. That information is there. So in fact, even relative density is indicated in section 9. So this column here, or the slash after the information on relative density, this is now telling you the pressure that the receptacle can withstand. So that means it was tested up to 160 kilopascal. That's what this is communicating to you. And then this is the common information, the year of manufacture, the country of manufacture, and only the final bits at the back is indicating to you that, giving you the certification number. That means the country or the state that has tested the packages and given the approval certificate and report, right? Like the serum will give a number. So sometimes you may have additional information, especially if it is a reconditioned package. If it is a reconditioned package, after the information where you get the approval number of the state that has tested it, Then what happens is you will get information that says R. I'm going to show you that to see whether because in my part 6 here that you see for your cells for function specific has very less information compared to the general awareness, yeah? Because in general awareness, we cover all of this so that when you come to FS, we don't need to cover it again. But sometimes what happens is people forget. So to cater for those who forgot, I just want to share this little bit to show you certain other things that I believe I need to bring to your attention, just to remind you again. Okay, so you see in the GA copy, it's quite nicer to see. You see all this, the numbers, right? And then for plastic packaging, the UN packing approval code. So this is your jerry cans, right? And your jerry cans, just want to make sure you're seeing the right thing as I am. Your jerry cans that are made out of plastic will have the month dial at the bottom of that because plastic cannot be used for more than 5 years. Right? And this is how the UN packing approval code looks like. So say if the drum has been reconditioned, after this information, there will be R indicated and the year indicated. And then you would know that the drum has been reconditioned as well. So sometimes with the alphabet R, there could also be an alphabet L to indicate that it was reconditioned and tested for leak proofness. Yeah. So when it comes to IBCs, so you see, this is where I meant the numbers were where you could find out, not in the FS version, in the GA version, where the numbers are indicating to you the type of product that can be filled into the type of IBCs. 11, 13, 21 are for solids and 31 are for liquids, right? And the material. So the IBCs, if you recall, the test a lot more, and the UN packing approval codes also. See, this is the one that showed you the different kind of IBCs. The UN packing approval code also is, of course, lengthy because it now, and especially when you look at a composite IBC like this, a composite IBC which has an inner made out of plastic will have the month and year information because plastic cannot be used for more than 5 years. Right, and this is what they were saying. So this is the inner, H is the inner when it's a composite packaging, and this is the outer. So the inner is plastic. 31 means an IBC made for liquid cargo. The material it is made out of, inner is plastic, H is plastic, A is metal, outer is metal. Yeah, and then one is a category, a subcategory of that. And then your packing group, pack for PG2 and 3, year, a month and year of manufacture, state authorized, state that has authorized it, and the approval number. And now this information is your stack test. That means if this IBC can be stacked on. So because it can be stacked on, the stack maximum stack test load information is here in the 4070. This is actually telling you the gross weight of the entire IBC can contain. This is the tear weight. This is the volume it can contain and the pressure it has been tested for. So stackable ones, if you recall, will have this symbol on them. If you can't stack on that IBC, it won't have this symbol, this one, right? So just to remind you of these things. Yeah. So once you are, okay, you remember all of this, then we go back to our part 6 of our own, which is not here. Wait, just give me a sec. I just want to check what happened. Why am I? I'm going to close some and then open the others because I've got a lot open now. So just give me a sec while I open the right document. Because when you look at hours for today, you will notice that at this point we come to your workshops. Okay, because you should have, you should be clear in terms of the UN packing approval code. I reiterated again for all of you. A little bit of GA came in just to remind you. Okay, all this. So which means that now we can move on to our exercises. Yeah, for LPs, LPs also have their own UN packing approval codes, and cylinders are still using the ISO systems, whereas tanks fall under the same convention as containers, which is the International Convention for Safe Containers, which requires that these tanks and containers are tested before use, and that in order to maintain them, that they are inspected every 2.5 years and have a full inspection every 5 years. And there are additional programs to this. So once approved, they obtain this corrosion-free plate, yeah, for sheeted bulk containers as well. And comes the workshop part. So the workshop part, I have put here a few questions. Name 4 types of tests that are conducted on packages. Can plastic receptacles be used for 10 years? After packages pass performance tests, what do they obtain? And then I ask you questions related to UN packing approval codes. Like here, this, and yeah, those. So if you can, you all have this. Can you please attempt to do these questions? And yeah, let's do them. You all do them, and then I'd like to see your answers if possible. What you can do is just type it out probably on a Word document or something, and attach it here. You see there's an attachment button here, a file attachment in your chat. You can just attach it there. I'm going to give you about 10 minutes to do this. It's not so difficult, yeah? Start the recording now, and I'm going to go back to the code book and show you something before we start anything of this nature. And that is going to the convention. Specifically, I'm going to look at the convention on the SOLAS convention, and I'm going to look at this that I'm showing you on the screen, which is regulation number 4. Now, regulation number 4 of the SOLAS convention relates to documents. And here it says that when it relates to DG, because regulation 4, chapter 7 of the SOLAS Convention, part A says, transport information relating to the carriage of dangerous goods in package form and the container vehicle packing certificate shall be in accordance to the relevant provisions of the code. So the SOLAS being, like we say, the mother of all laws pertaining to maritime safety, there are these 2 huge laws, right? One is on maritime safety, which is our SOLAS convention, the oldest one. And then came the MEPC, Maritime Environment Protection and Conservation, which is our MAPOL convention, and that came in the late 60s. So these two are known as the main laws of the rules of the sea. So these 2 rules of the sea pertaining to safety and maritime conservation, both of them indicate the use of the IMDG code. However, in SOLAS, they go so far as to say that in documentation, apart from the declaration, each container or vehicle that has been packed with dangerous goods has to be accompanied with a container packing certificate. So this container packing certificate They say here, shall be made. Shall, whenever they use the word shall in any legal English, means it's mandatory. So it must be made available to the person or organization designated by the port state authority. So usually what happens here is the control of this document is done in normal senses by the port authority, because the port authority are actually the enforcers of the rules. The Marine Department is the regulator. They are the local counterpart of the international agency, which is IMO. So the local counterpart for IMO in Malaysia is the Malaysian Marine Department. So they uphold these regulations, but when it comes to enforcement, they won't do it. The enforcement is done by the port authorities in their individual terminals that they manage. So we see the container packing certificate is managed here in a sense that in Port Klang, only those that have been registered with LPK are allowed to sign this form. However, we see that this situation does not occur everywhere. I know that there are certain ports, port authorities in different states that have started it, in the like Bintulu, Labuan, have all started the CPC. That means there is a requirement on it. But I think in terms of control, where they only allow certain people, there's a control a number or some form of a control given to show that only specific people are allowed to sign this form. I think maybe that is not there yet. I'm not sure. Am I right, Prunella? Because you ship loads out of there, DG Cargo. Is there any such system like LPK system there? No, no, your mic is off, my dear.
These documents are requested by shipping lines before they can even load the cargo.
So it's
On
not
the
the
same
port
time,
authority.
it's not the port authority. The shipping lines require it because now the ports that they are calling requires those documents. So again, it goes back to Port Klang. If it's calling Port Klang as the first stop, or Singapore as the first stop,
Then you need
and
it, lah.
then then they need it, and the final destination they also need it. Now the only issue maybe that you can touch on is there are areas whereby, you know, the forms that we fill in the general declaration, they have another format where the shipping line uses it. And I was just talking it when I was in KL with Green Pen, was that the packing group and the packing group is one whereby the port may change in that terms. It's like I can call it in my MSDS is packing group 3, you know, and then but when I submit it to the shipping line, they'll come back and says no, this one you have to declare under packing group 2 because the port wants it to be, or the shipping line. So when it's, the difference here is this: in terms of price, a packing group 3 and a packing group 2 carries a different cost.
Yes, of
You know,
course, in terms of its
so
risk.
they have this tendency. They have this tendency of changing that packing group
Information.
information.
All
In
right,
terms of
can I try and
how.
answer this question? Could it possibly be that they are confusing port grouping systems and packing groups?
I
Because
have
you
a
see,
feeling that
yeah, because I tend to notice, and this is probably, I shouldn't be naming carriers lah, but this could be MTT that you're dealing with.
it can be them. It can be also the other packing, the other lines that
The international
for
liners shouldn't be doing this lah, but I think more of our local regional carriers are
PIL
misunderstanding.
also changes it.
See, it's usually the regional local carriers. But if
Yeah,
you
actually,
if you hit the double OCLs and the Costco's and the Merce lines, and these guys would have not would. If somebody else wants to add in, who was saying something
yes.
just now?
Reshma, because Mala here from DC Logistic, we
Yeah,
also
Mala.
experience the same issue whereby the packing group in the MSTS will show as a DG3,
Mm,
the packing group 3.
mm.
So, but the liner, when they check and then they come back to it, they'll say, oh, this one will require to be DG2 and then need a direct discharge and all those things.
Yeah, that is
So,
pod grouping system. So they looks like, so again, I ask you, Mala, are you referring to a shipment that's heading to East Malaysia or
yeah,
somewhere
is
around?
East Malaysia.
Yeah,
East
because you
Malaysia.
will always have this problem with our regional carriers. Now, in our regional carriers, many of them have not even bothered to get themselves trained, because you need to understand that there are two concepts here. Although when they are communicating hazards, they're using that three categories, meaning 1, 2, 3. In packing group concept also, we use the three categories, right? 1 is very, 2 is medium, and 3 is minor. So they use that same concept, but they are using it in the constant context of the port, because they are looking at it in terms of the port's preparedness in the event of an accident, you know. So
Yes.
it, like, something may be under port grouping system 2, let's say, sorry, under port grouping system 3 in LPK, but when it goes, say, to Miri port or to another smaller port, they put it under port grouping system 2, right or not? Isn't it?
Yes.
But this happens with
Oh,
exports to Singapore as well, or Portland.
That is really odd. That means they honestly don't know the difference, because you
for me,
cannot change packing group information
yeah,
unless,
Correct.
same
of
happens
course,
for
the
Phuket
packing group
as well.
information itself is wrong. That means that the SDS has declared something wrong. But then in
I-
that sense, they will come back and tell you that the SDS is not correct, right or not?
But most of the times, the movement is that the SDS that we actually have are
Mm,
the international SDS. If you download from the internet website as well,
mm.
it's exactly the same. If you check the book, it's also exactly the
I
same.
know, I know, I know. It cannot be, because you see, it all boils down to that UN committee of experts, that orange book. So
Correct.
these guys are
So I
following an international guideline, you
so
know?
what I suspect is it could be the port availability of handling the product. I know East
Exactly.
Malaysia, especially the Sabah ports, they are talking about all DGs. Even Labuan also,
All DG.
our Labuan Port Authority now says that no, DG cargo you're going to take out immediately. I said, friend, it's not I want to take out or I don't want to take out. The problem here is
Mm,
um, the documents are not released in time for us to clear the cargo and the consignment to take it out.
exactly.
You,
Exactly.
you, you
And
know,
this
you
leading
cannot
us to
just
the
say,
additional.
and you just have to find a way of how you can place the thing, you know, where you can place the thing that you think will have an issue or not an issue lah. But it's like an overnight thing. So you cannot be telling us, okay, we have to stand by and take the cargo out and all this rubbish. Think about it, if it was during the period of MCO, you can
MCO,
take out
then
or
what
cannot
will
take
you
out.
do? Exactly.
Correct.
Illogical.
So yeah, so this
Illogical.
is where they say it's MCO we cannot get together to make decisions, but bottom line is you still have to take it out. I says, what rubbish are you guys talking about? You know? So but these are the area
The
where I think we
challenges lah. You know,
challenges that
like
we have
I am recording this class, and if you all allow, I will take excerpts of this class and share it with Masa and with Sam. You know, because
yes,
and
you can.
also the port authorities per se, because not all port authority people themselves have been updated or trained or even know. You know, not all. Okay, I'm
Mm.
not saying that they are, we cannot assume that everybody knows everything. So you will have this issue where you will be debating the thing right up to until the cows can fly up to the moon, you know, meaning that you can't get any resolve in it, because ultimately for the shipper is, I need to get that space on that ship and I need to move my cargo.
Yes.
So they may have to, in the end of the day, um, you know, accept the increase in whatever rates just because it had been moved from a lower hazard group, or they have confused between packing group and port grouping systems.
Reshma, I also have one time I encountered this one I sent to Brunei.
Mm,
It's a water-based paint, and the MSGS clearly indicated is actually water-based, is non-regulated.
mm,
But out of sudden, this liner, they told me this cargo will be declared as a DG,
mm.
which is they did charge us DG, because reason why they're telling Brunei take it this as even though it's a water-based, they took it this as a paint
So
still.
they took it under which UN number?
1263. But
Crazy
I said we
bunch of
cannot.
people.
Exactly. And then
Crazy.
until
Even if they put it under 3082, I will say, okay, fine. Maybe you think it's an environmental hazard. And in your country, you call even water-based paint an environment hazard can be okay, lah, acceptable. But if you call a water-based paint in your country a flammable liquid, then I also don't know, lah, where are we going and what is happening. That means the carriers are having a field day, lah, in this sense.
exactly, but I
Literally.
that the consignment I didn't move, but I argued with them lah. But then eventually, then after that, they come back to us after quite some time.
Mm.
Then only they say, oh no, this is non water based. So if I would actually move the consignment, then my customer will actually pay the
So
duty.
because you were sure of yourself, you knew
Yeah,
it was right and you argued and then they went and did their checking up, right? So which
yes,
means to say initially they thought whatever la, DG je lah.
yeah,
So that means they're trying to see if you're ignorant, in other words. If you're ignorant, it is blissful for them. They can add on as much charges as they want.
yeah. But the
Now
thing
you
is,
know
they don't
knowledge
really.
is king at the end of the day.
Yeah, like just now how Prunella said, right, it's about port facilities, right? See, the moment they saying yes, because you don't facility, you want me to arrange a direct discharge, everything. But they didn't see that if the vessel is arriving midnight, if it's a
Mm.
public holidays, I have additional more charges on top of what is premium DG surcharge I'm paying. And
So
it's
you're
also not
telling me in all the pod grouping systems, like for instance, like Prunella, you mentioned, whether it's group 1, group 2 or group 3, you have to do direct discharge or
yes,
direct loading.
Yes.
yeah.
Then why have a grouping system then? What's the point in the pod grouping system if you're going to say all grouping systems have to be discharged? Although they have their bylaws that say otherwise, you know that, right?
Yep.
Mm.
And when you quote the bylaws to them, what do they say?
Nothing.
They still
You just say
stick to
direct.
this one. Yeah, direct.
Ah, direct.
But then, so that means, okay, wait. When it goes to this pod, they change it from the pod grouping system 3 to a grouping system 2. Is that it?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
So
Yes.
because they change it, then you have to follow the bylaw. So even if you take the bylaw and show to them, they say, yeah, la, there, you see, group 2 direct discharge, they'll show that back
Mhm.
to you. So
Yeah.
what you're saying is,
Because you
how
see,
do
I
I?
think what we actually had to look at and what we actually had to argue with was in East Malaysia, for example. The whole idea in East Malaysia, the way I look at it is the excuse is that we don't have firemen on standby.
Yeah.
Okay,
Mm,
that's their excuse.
mm,
Yeah.
So to us is, I fully agree you don't have. Then what are you doing about it?
mm. Just have to accept it, in other words, la. That's what they're saying.
Correct. So if we have been accepting this cargo for the last 50 years,
Mm,
correct,
mm,
without these additional requirements,
mm.
then either you put the facilities in and we pay the extra charge lah,
Yeah.
Mm.
or you know, or do something about it. But you cannot just keep on saying it is about growth. Whether you are port authority or whether you are port or you are still looking at the consumer market. Bottom line.
And the
Yes.
day. Exactly.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, looks like even the plans that we asked for to set up a commission, it seems to
Yeah.
be thrown out of the. Yeah. So we're gonna have these issues for a while, I'm pretty sure.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm afraid I can't comment here because this is beyond my scope of ability to do anything other than for us to sit and rant about and try and tell certain authorities in the hope that they fix this thing. because this will really affect our competitiveness, right? So
Mm.
yeah, coming back to documentations, because we now totally digress to this whole thing, because we were trying to understand about packing groups. Now I understand, Prunella, where you were coming from day one when you spoke about this packing group thing, right?
Yep.
Just give me 1 second, yeah? Just 1 second. I want to set something up. Right. Okay. So let's start with this, and let's move to part 5 and begin with the session, right? Right. So in consignment procedures, I'm trying to make the screen of mine a bit smaller so I see less people. Hold on. Shut my door so you don't get sudden people walking in. So we begin with marks and labels on packages, all right, where the code prescribes in a sense that what is that needs to be marked on a package. And when we look at what is required in terms of marking a package, we have to indicate the UN number, the PSN of the substance, and the code also prescribes that the UN number and the PSN is indicated clearly, and the code also prescribes the size. So I'm actually going to open up a UN number that I had planned to open up today for us to start with this. Okay, so the UN number that I picked is 1244. I'm going to open it on the screen for all of you as well. There you go, it's methyl hydrazine. So assuming we had a substance of such that needed to be shipped out. So when we mark it, what we're doing is we're indicating the UN number, UN 1244, and we indicate the PSN, which is methyl hydrazine. Methyl hydrazine. So the code prescribes to us that when we indicate the mark of the substance, that the height of the mark should be minimum 12 mm in height. Yeah. And also along with the mark, each substance has to also have the hazard symbols that correspond to the UN number. So in this, there are 3 hazards. One main hazard of a 6.1 and 2 sub-hazards of one is a 3 and the other is a 8. Okay, so the code also prescribes that these labels, it gives us properties of these labels. It tells us that these labels have to be 100 by 100 mm in height, in size, all right? Should be affixed next to the mark. Should indicate all hazards. That means main and sub, if there is a sub hazard for that UN number. And it should withstand 3 months immersion in sea. So the quality of this label must be such that that in 3 months immersion in seawater that it will not disintegrate. And the code prescribes that when it comes to packaging, so packaging means column number 8 lah. When it comes to packaging, the code prescribes that you only need to do it minimum one side, right? The only time you do it on two sides is when you have a IBC. So if it is an IBC will have on both sides the markings and labelings. If it is a normal package in column number 8, then you only need to do it on one side. All right, so this is very straightforward. And then this slide here talks about when do you use the marine pollutant mark, right? So if, for instance, the inner package inside this box happens to be above 5 liters or 5 kgs, then you have to stick, for instance, if it's a UN number that also has marine pollutant as one of its hazards, then you have to also indicate the marine pollutant symbol here. However, if, for instance, it is packed in less than 5 liters or 5 kgs, the inner receptacles, then you need not put the marine pollutant mark. Yeah, you don't have to put the marine pollutant symbol on the package itself. Now, also you have these orientation symbols, and these orientation symbols only appear when there is a combination package where the inner package is for liquid cargoes. So it appears for those kinds of packaging as well as packagings that are single packages that have vents in them, or the cryogenic packages, which means the receptacles that are used for gas. So these are the general provisions. Labels must be located on the same surface of the package near the PSN, as I mentioned here. Primary and subsidiary hazard symbols must be indicated if the substance has sub-hazards as well. And for IBCs, IBCs have to have minimum 2 opposite sides marked and labeled. If it is packages, one side is sufficient. And it must survive 3 months immersion in seawater, which means the quality of this types of packaging. All right, so this reiterates the size of the marks. And this is when we have pelletized the consignment. So if you have unitized single loads, and once you have unitized these single loads into here, then this becomes a pellet that contains multiple unit packages. So which means that when you have pelletized it, you have, in addition, to indicate a mark called overpack, right? Because overpack is the terminology that is used to state that this is a pelletized cargo. So here you cannot see inside. So obviously we understand that marking and labeling is done for easy identification of the substances during its transit. Because if anything were to happen, there are 2 things that we indicate in a mark and a label. The UN and PSN is indicated in a sense that when there is an accident, then you know what proper measures to take to address an accident by looking at the safety data sheet, by knowing the UN number. Also, the hazard symbols are indicated for those people who actually do not know the UN and PSN, like your transport workers, the guys in the warehouse. Not everyone goes for DG training. So when you apply a symbol, our hazard symbols, they look scary enough, they're colorful, and they give you enough indication to know in a sense that there is something dangerous that has been packed in there. So the purpose of marking and labeling, the objective is for that the package is easily identifiable. And if you pack it into a pallet, then the marking and labeling objective is totally gone, because you cannot then see what has been packed. Hence the reason why you may have to repeat the same information on the overpack and indicate as well in a mark stating that this package is an overpack. Right, so there are these
Reshma,
two. Yes.
in terms of overpack, if it is only one product, you still use the word overpack or just do the same marking outside?
You mean to say there is you use a crate,
One product,
crate, is it? Or is it one
one
drum?
product, all the
No,
individual, no. You can have like 4 drums on one pallet, correct? So you
yeah.
don't need, it's the same thing. So you don't
Yeah,
need to use the word
you have to. You use overpack the minute you unitize. So if you unitize two different DGs only, you will unitize if they are compatible, right? Otherwise, you won't unitize.
correct.
However, if you unitize multiple drums of the same unit number, it's still considered unitization. So the minute you unitize, you have to use the word overpack on the pallet. So irregardless kalau different DGs ke or the same DGs.
That is if you ship it as a loose consignment. What if it is all put into one
No,
container?
if it doesn't matter whether it is LCL or FCL. The minute it is pelletized, it has to have the overpack mark on it. So it doesn't matter whether it's a full load or an LCL cargo.
Will
Yeah,
we be charged extra?
sorry?
Will we be charged extra if there's overpack?
Why would you
What is
be
the
charged extra? What is the
no
basis of charging extra?
no?
That
What
is,
is the purpose there of putting overpack just to show that I have a lot of things inside the
I
pallet?
have multiple packages packed on a single platform. Yes.
Okay.
Because it could be just one item in there. I mean to say probably it's a crated box, and in that crated box probably just like we look at P001, okay, so it could be a crated box that is probably 400 kgs and combination packaging. That means they probably have plastic bottles put inside this crated box under P001, and it's 400. If it's 400 kgs, you cannot carry it. You're still going to put it on a pallet, right? Yeah. So obviously when you put a 400 kg thing on a pallet, you will never put one on the pallet. You will probably put two on a pallet. Each one will be marked. The minute you put two more than one on a pallet and you shrink wrap it or you unitize it in any manner, you have to indicate that it's an overpack. It does not relate to the risk factor. That means the only thing that affects your premium rates on your freight is what Prunella mentioned earlier just now, is your packing group. Because the packing group will define, of course, the class 1, class 7, those, selective classes have got their own risks attached to them. But in addition to that, for the classes that run on the packing group concept, the packing group will define the freight surcharge. Okay.
Rishma, I have
Yeah.
a question.
Mm-hmm.
If, for example, if the customer they are shipping out like a paint on in a drum or something, they already their drum manufacturer already have the labeling on the hazard labels and the UN. So do they need to paste again, or they can ship out as such?
If they follow the conditions, that means if the hazard symbol, because sometimes these drum manufacturers, they confuse the GHS pictogram with the hazard symbol, As long as
Okay.
there is a clear distinction on what is the transport hazard symbol and what is the GHS pictogram. And as long as the UN and PSN are described in the manner as prescribed in the code, which means that
Okay.
minimum 12 millimeter height and all that. So as
Okay.
long as it follows what has been prescribed in the code, it's fine. Then you can use it.
Okay.
But the minute they pelletize it, they bring it to your place and say, you pelletize it. Do you all do the pelletizing? Because if it's
No,
LCL, no.
no, they will do by themselves.
So if they are doing pelletizing, then obviously you would have to put the overpack symbol on the package. Okay, this overpack mark.
And I would like to confirm this overpack, and if for the overpack, the marking and labeling, we have to paste it at one side only, or has to go at 4 side? Because previously I got my during one stuffing, the LPK officer attended, they asked me to put at the 4 sides
No,
of
now
the
you
over.
have to tell me who this officer is because I'm hearing a lot of this information. Okay. You're not the only one to tell me this, Mala. So I need to know the name of this officer so I can actually pin down the person to know who is actually miscommunicating. Because I know Quack won't do that. Right? Quack and me share a lot. We like every 1 or 2 weeks we will call each other and she will share stuff with me because she's very passionate about this, and then she'll tell me, oh, you know, the sport users are doing this, you better include this in the training, tell them that, tell them this, and blah blah blah. So I know that she wouldn't have done this, but if someone else does that, and if you have the code book, I would ask you to go to part 5. Okay, I'm sharing that now on the screen with you. Okay. And in here, you can see labeling. 5.2 is all marking and labeling of packages, right? So when you click this, marking of packages, including IBCs. So they tell you, it starts like, because it's all long, 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 we break it down in bullets. They start by telling you the size of the mark. See, the UN number shall be at least 12 millimeters in height, except for those packages that have capacities less than 30 kg, then they say you can reduce the size, okay? And then they indicate how the UN number has to be indicated, yeah? And then when they tell you all package marks required by shall be ready, then these are generally the information about the properties. Shall be readily visible, legible, shall be such that the information shall be identified on the package of surviving 3 months immersion in sea, shall be displayed on a background of contrasting color, and shall not be located with other package marks that could substantially reduce their effectiveness. And then you notice here, still nothing, just telling you the size of the mark, okay? And then telling you for IBCs, see this? Intermediate bulk containers of more than 450 liters and LP shall be marked on 2 opposite sides. But when you read this, it doesn't tell you anything on how many sides a package must be marked. Because where you have to look at column of the DGL, right? Column 8 is packages, column 10 is IBCs. And they put package and IBC here together. And when they come to package, they don't tell you how many sides you should mark. Nothing. You read lah. You read. Nothing. Nothing. But they only tell you for IBC. So the assumption here is if they don't tell you, I can put one side should be cukup, right?
As long as I stuff, then when the marking is facing the door, when
Orientated at the door.
Orientated.
Exactly. As long as when you open the door means you must see the thing. You must see the marks and the labels, right? Then then it makes, so you notice here they don't tell you. Then they go on to talk about what I was talking about, the orientation symbols, blah 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 blah, but nothing here. So if anyone tells you in LPK, first find out who they are so you can share that information with me, and then secondly, have the book and show them and ask them to read to you and tell you where does it say 4 sides of the package. Because you say you will follow as long as it costs money, you know, sticking these marks and
Exactly.
labels.
One label is cost as a 50 cent, you know.
Exactly. And you put on 4 sides, there's already 2
Cost 2
ringgit there.
ringgit.
Exactly. And now every cent counts. So you don't want to
Yes.
be wasting money sticking stickers like a wild person all over the package, right? Right. So always remember, go back to the book, find out what the book is saying. And when you want to look at overpacks, just so we get the overpack story out. All right, the use of overpacks. So the code tells you an overpack or unit load shall be marked with the PSN and UN and marked and labeled as required for packages under 5.2. 5.2 is telling you how to mark and label, right? What we were discussing. So they're saying that that the overpacks must have this information on them as well, in addition to the individual package. For each item of DG contained in the overpack or unit load, unless the marks and labels representative of all dangerous goods in the unit load or overpack are visible. So they say if you can see the individual marks and labels on the packages that you have unitized on that pallet, then no need. But if you cannot see, please put the mark and label, because why? Objective ma, easily identifiable. But in addition to that, an overpack in addition shall be marked with the words overpack.
Okay.
There you see? So which means now they're telling you, you must indicate the letter overpack, and they tell you the height of the overpack. But it doesn't say that it's only for individual types of DG, doesn't even say for multiple types of DG. So as long as if it's multiple types of DG, they are compatible, then they can be packed in a simple overpack. If not, even if it's a single DG that has been unitized on a pallet, then you need to have the overpack. So the overpack must be there. The
Okay. And
information.
I have another one question.
Mhm.
If the cargo is, for example, in a carton box, they packed all in a carton box. For example, it's like consumer goods, for example, like a perfume, because they just put in individual carton boxes, or maybe air freshener, and then they stuff it in the container. Also, it's all in loose. So in that case,
They sorry,
do I
they
need,
what? They what in the?
and they stuff in the container in as a loose. It's in a
Okay,
one
okay.
by one. It's not the overpack. So in
They
that
didn't
case,
palletize it. Okay.
they didn't palletize. So if the labeling, do I need to, like, if all is the same class, do I need to, like, every, like, 1,000 cartons, I need to paste 1,000 stickers? I mean, 1,000 label.
How big is the carton box? Tell me.
It's small only. It's small cartons.
How small? Be specific.
I think zero. The time when I got that was about 0.02, no, 0.03 M3 per carton.
What is the UN number? Can you tell me?
1950.
So
It was an air
1950. And if each of these 1950 is aerosol can, okay? So each of these aerosol cans contain what? Class 2.1, 2.3, or 2.2? What does it contain?
2.1.
2.1. So
Yeah.
the SP will indicate to you how much you can fill in there, right? Kind of not, because we can
Yeah.
put this under limited quantity, remember?
Yes, yes. But if
So
it's sending in a bulk,
it does, but it doesn't matter.
container.
Each of it can go in, see, for aerosols or receptacles containing toxic substances, limited quantity value is 120 ml. For aerosols or receptacles with limited quantity value is 1000 milliliters. Only toxic is 150. All right. But for non-toxic, you can go up to 1 liter. See that?
Okay.
And it can actually go as a limited quantity package. So if it goes as a limited quantity package, then you just stick one limited quantity sticker only. You don't have to put the UNPSN and the hazard symbol. But yeah, 1000 packages means 1000 of them will have to have it.
Oh my God.
What value added, ma? Do for your customer, can earn money, ma.
It was taking time, Reshma. I was like,
Time
oh.
is money, my dear. For people like business people, for us, time is money. Meaning that if it's going to take me time, I'm going to charge you money for it. So as long as your
Yeah,
customer wants to pay for it, lah.
just now I shared the overpack, I paste at 4 sides, right? So I still follow and then I pasted 4 sides. I only paste about 20 pallets, and then looking into that, it took me about 45 minutes for me, like one by one, 4 sides.
For the overpacks, is it? Because the
Overpack.
overpacks, you just need to do it on minimum 2 sides, I think.
Minimum, okay.
Yeah. Because here, like when we talk about overpacks or so, okay, yeah, we go back to that. one thing, this code also, you see the English in the code and then the way they explain, sometimes you feel like, why you all can't speak simple English? Why you must put like this kind of crazy English for people? So that's why we have to come for training lah. So we have to read each package, package bearing package orientation marks. So this is orientation marks. Here they tell you to follow 5.2. Okay, so when we go to 5.2, 5.2 is talking about marking packages and IBCs, correct? So then again, remember that when they spoke about how many sides to mark here in this part, they only referred to IBC's minimum 2 sides. See that? They didn't say overpacks minimum 2 sides. They didn't say packages minimum 2 sides. Let's see that I got some more. This is for radioactive. So if I look at 5.2.1.5.1, I'm referring to only those that are radioactive. Each overpack shall be legibly and durably marked on the outside of the overpack with an identification of either the consignor or consignee. So even when they talk about overpack here, they're referring to class 7. But when I go to the top here, nothing in terms of how many sides am I supposed to mark a package. Is there a minimum number or a maximum number, or for an overpack? You only tell me that specifically for IBCs. See that? So code that. When they tell you to do that, then you have to show this to them and explain to them that it costs money. And I will ask you to please look for Quack, Miss Quack. Try and get her. She really knows her stuff. So try and get hold of her. If any one of them, I think it's probably Hasnul, right? One of them. So try and get Miss Quack. Or I mean, no offense meant. She's quite clear with this thing, so she'll be able to help you out and understand it better. Okay. Any more questions before we move on? All right. No questions. We continue with here, the overpack, right? That's where we ended. And then this is where the limited quantity marks comes in. So as you can see, when a consignment falls under the limited quantity provisions, then there is the exception where they do not need the hazard symbols and they do not need the UN and PSN. They just require the limited quantity mark on them. And for accepted quantity, as I mentioned to you yesterday, these are pre-printed packages. So they would have the accepted quantity symbol already on them. The only information that is required is the class and the shipper's details here. Now, this is the lithium battery mark. And the lithium battery mark, okay, they say the packages containing lithium cells or batteries prepared in accordance to SP188 shall be marked as follows. So they have two. I'm going to open SP188. All right, so SP188 is defining the type of batteries. Cells and batteries offered for transport are not subject to other provisions of this code if they meet the following. So they say for lithium batteries or lithium alloy cell or lithium content is not more than 1 gram. And for lithium ion cell, the watt hour rating is not more than 20 watt hours. Or for lithium metal alloy, here they give you 2 grams minimum with 100 hours wattage. Yeah. And they also tell you about those that are manufactured before 1st January 2009, or each cell battery that meets the provision of 2.9.4.1, which is the test criteria for these batteries. Then they indicate to you about the types of packaging that is required, and they tell you that it has to be marked with this symbol, right, which is the lithium battery mark. So this lithium battery mark, this mark shall indicate the UN number here, preceded with the letter UN. For instance, here 3090 for lithium metal cells or batteries, or UN 3480 for lithium ion cells or batteries, where the lithium cells or batteries are contained in or packed with equipment. The UN number preceded by the letters UN, which means for these UN numbers, this is where they are packed with the equipment, shall be indicated on the package. So they're telling you this is the mark that you would use for that, and they give you the size of the mark, right? Now also note they talk about these provisions concerning marking and special provisions 188 is from the amendment 3718 can continue until the 31st. So this is just a period where they're given for an old mark that could be used. And here packages containing lithium batteries packed in conformity with the provisions in part 4 chapter 11 for packing instruction 965 and 968. This is for air cargo, ICAO instructions for safe transport by air. They have given us the lithium battery marks of this, and they have also given us the label 9A. Okay, and the label 9A is this one. This is the label 9A. All right. Okay, for depending on the content, the lithium ion content. So after we finish marking, labeling, and whatnot, we then move on to placarding. And placarding is placarding is also like a hazard symbol, but a hazard symbol that is now in a bigger size. The size of a placard is 250 by 250. So here it is about the orientation. That means exactly how many sides do you placard depending on the cargo transport unit. And of course, these conditions on the size 250 by 250 about what is it that we are placarding. We are placarding the hazard symbols that correspond to the UN numbers that have been packed into the CTU, that it should withstand 3 months immersion in seawater, and all these other stuff when it has to be removed when the CTU is empty and not required for certain classes. Yeah, so all this information aside, then it explains to us on how many sides it needs to be placarded depending on the CTU. So if it's a rail, there are 2 sides. If it's a truck, then it's on 2 opposite sides in the rear. And if it's the container, 1 on each side. Or if it's the portable tank, or if it's a semi-trailer, then it's 1 on each side. So in addition to the standard placarding requirements, there are additional requirements when it comes to a portable tank, because a portable tank contains about 18 to 20,000 liters of a single item, DG, that has been filled into it. So a tank would also, in addition to having the hazard placards on all 4 sides of them, at least on both sides, it would have to indicate the UN number, all right, of the substance and the PSN. Now in tanks, you notice that this is what I was speaking about. The orange panel at the bottom is giving you the UN number. The numbers on top here is known as the hazard identification numbers. All right, and also the PSNs have to be indicated on at least both sides of the tank. Also, when you have a CTU, which is a container, and you've packed that container with a single UN number of more than 4,000 kgs, along with the hazard placards, you also have to indicate the UN number of that substance that you have packed in more than 4,000 kgs into the CTU. So the option is either you use a placard that already has that space in between where you can indicate the UN number, or you what you do is otherwise you substitute that with using an orange panel that then indicates the UN number of the substance that has been packed in above 4,000 kgs. Now, this is the mark that goes onto containers that have substances that are in elevated temperatures, the organic peroxides, what I was speaking about. And this is where I shared with you yesterday when we did limited quantity. Also, I showed you how the code is so gray in this area that when they talk about placarding limited quantity on CTUs on a container, they only give us two examples, two options. They say one is if you pack a container with non-DG and DG in LQ, then you stick the LQ symbol on all four sides. The second situation, they give us an example in the code in part 3 related to this limited quantity. They say that if you pack a container with DG in normal quantities and in LQ quantities, then you have to use the normal quantity hazard symbols, not the LQ symbol. But they do not tell us if a container is packed up completely with LQs, which is always happening anyways, everywhere. We can see this happening all the time. So when it's packed completely with LQs, at this point of time, even the port authority tells you to put the LQ symbols on all four sides. Because why? It's quite gray in the code. And then, like I said yesterday, we will wait for some massive incident to take place in order for them to see whether we should actually indicate the hazard symbols when a whole container is packed with LQ. Now, this is only when a container has been fumigated, you have the fumigant warning sign. But the fumigant warning sign will not be on the door of the container once it's ventilated. It's only when the fumigant is in that container. Then only this symbol goes, this sign goes on the door to warn us because it is a toxic substance, right? And similarly, when we use anything that's a cooling substance, they will have this sign here to indicate on the door, because whoever's going to open the container has to be careful. You cannot open and immediately stick your head in. Chances are you might feel faintish because there's large amounts of gases that replace oxygen. So if you don't faint, you might feel faintish or get a really nasty headache. Yeah. Of course, in worst case scenarios is if you lock yourself in there, then yeah, chances are you die of suffocation. Why would you be doing that, right? That's not something that you would be doing. And this is the summary of the marks and labels. So if it is a normal consignment will then indicate the same hazard symbols on all four sides of the CTU. And then again, remember, if it has a single UN of more than 4,000 kgs, then you also have the orange panel that will go on that. And then the LQ. And when it's accepted quantities, of course, you do not need to indicate that on the container if it is packed with non-DG cargo. Okay, so this summarizes the marking and labeling portion of it. Now we come to the documentation label. Now I'm just going to ask you to give me a short break because I want to run to the washroom, and I'll come back again and we continue with 5. Yeah, give me about 5-10 minutes. I'll be back. Okay, so sorry. So sorry to take so long. I'm back again. And now we start with documentation, yeah? So we need to understand one thing. When we talk about documentation, wow, I continued, I'll have to edit this video. Lah. When we talk about documentation, you have to take note that and understand one thing is
Can
that,
I just ask something first?
of course, please, by all means.
Okay, I have sent few containers of batteries and chargers to Bintulu and Labuan,
Mhm.
but I have never put any other stickers than the
Class 9
the
sticker.
yes.
What is your
That's the
UN
only.
number?
I really don't know. My
Interesting.
super
So,
will give me.
okay, so you don't have anything on you right now that you can
No,
use
I
as an
no
example.
no. I
And
know
what
my
kind of
battery is
batteries
class
are
three.
these? What kind of batteries are these? If they are
Battery class
non-lit,
three.
huh?
I tell you.
Class
Wait.
3, batteries will be in class 9.
This is industrial nickel cadmium cells.
Okay,
Industrial
so
nickel.
these aren't lithium batteries, right?
No.
So we are talking about lithium batteries.
Oh.
Okay, those symbols. So if yours falls under class 9, wait, I'm looking for batteries. If yours falls under class 9, yours is what? Nickel metal, is it? What is it?
Nickel cadmium.
Nickel,
CAD.
nickel cadmium.
Yeah.
So it would probably be either 3496, UN 3496.
Okay.
Yeah, it would be one of those. If it is not a lithium battery, it won't ask for that lithium battery mark. That is specifically for lithium batteries.
I think
So
the ones that she's sending is more the car batteries if it's in
Yeah,
bulk.
exactly. So that one falls under class 9 and they are not going to ask you for anything other than,
I think car batteries, they may have acids.
yeah, but even then if they are filled, because under batteries here, let me show you all. Okay, I'm showing the screen, right? Go to the alphabetical index.
I have the MSDS.
That's why I wanted the UN number lah. What is the UN number?
Okay, 2795.
2795. 279. Batteries wet filled with alkaline.
Yep.
Okay, so here in this there is no provision because you see you're just sticking the class 8 symbol. That's it.
Yep.
That is sufficient because this is
Okay.
not a lithium battery. And then if you click SP295 or so, see the batteries need not be individually marked and labeled if the pellet bears the appropriate mark and label. So they even tell you your individual batteries don't have to be marked and labeled. If you pelletize it, your pellet has the mark and label, that would be sufficient. That's what SP295 is telling you. They're not
Okay.
telling you to use any other. Okay.
All right.
Right.
Madam, sorry,
Yes.
madam.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Can we add on another example?
Uh-huh.
UN 3090 lithium battery.
So lithium battery will be a different story, right? Lithium battery will require the lithium battery mark. Let's go to 3090. All
That's
right.
correct.
So you see, when you look at 3090, just look at how many instructions are there. First, you go to 188. And just now I showed you 188, right? 188 was actually telling you that if the battery contains if the battery contains here, where are we? If the battery contains less than 2 milligrams of the lithium ion content, you will use this sticker. If it contains more than 2 grams of lithium ion content, then you will be using the label 9A, which is this one. Okay. Yeah, this fellow, this here. So that's lithium. So you must be sure on what battery you're talking about. If it's lithium battery, then the lithium battery is already telling you the marks you need to indicate. depending on the lithium ion content in that battery. Because all this other stuff, this 230, this one is talking about, see, lithium batteries and cells may be transported under this entry if they meet this. If they meet this, that means they're talking about the test to test these batteries, right? So all the other SPs are not actually talking, only this one's going to talk to you about the mark, and this is where along with this will be your label, and this will be your placard. But the one that I showed you here, where did you go? This will be on the package. Okay, so this won't be a placard. This will be, if it is less than 2 milligrams, it will have this. 2 grams, it'll have this. If it is more than 2 grams, it will have this sticker on it. Is that okay? Hi, whoever I shared this question, who asked this question, was it Chan? Was it you?
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, great. I just want to know whether I covered that. All right. So you don't use the lithium mark unless it is lithium, and that also on the condition of how much it contains. So when we come to this documentation, we must understand one thing very, very, very superbly clear in our mind is that the carrier has no idea what you have packed inside the container. They have zero idea. The only time they know is when you tell them. If you don't tell them something, they will never know about it. And because when a shipper tenders goods to a carrier and a carrier accepts the tender to move the goods for the shipper, in order to solidify that agreement, a contract is established. And that contract, we call that the bill of lading, right? The contract of carriage. And that contract of carriage is between the shipper and the carrier. So the shipper in this sense can be the manufacturer of the goods. That means who is the party that is in contract with the carrier. When the BL is issued, the shipper column says who. If the shipper column says the actual shipper, the manufacturer, that party is in contract with the carrier because the BL, that document contract, has showed that. But if, for instance, you are a freight forwarder that issues house BLs, meaning you've accepted the booking for your shipper, for your customer, and then you probably have a deal with the carrier, and you probably have an office or a network of agents in the port of destination where this cargo is going, and you decide to issue a house BL. The minute you issue a house BL, then you become the contracted party with the carrier, which means the freight forwarder is now the shipper in this case. Okay. Now the point first, I'm trying to explain the legality in terms of the contract agreement. Because in the bill of lading, the carrier does a lot of things to remove itself from the liability trap. And one of the most significant things that it does by stating certain notifications on the bill of lading, and one of which that we're very familiar, we do it all the time, and we need to understand the gravity of that terminology. Whenever we're describing what is contained in a container, be it a 20 or a 40 footer, we would always say 1 times 20 or 1 times 40, and then we'd use the STC, said to contain. So when you use the word said to contain, the carrier is issuing the bill of lading here, which is the contract in this case. And the carrier is on their own document, meaning on the bill of lading, you see the carrier's badge there, you know, the company details or whatever, to tell you that that document is their document. And in that document, they are declaring to everybody, because it's a contract, it's a legal document. So they're declaring in the contract that the shipper is tendering 1 times 20-foot container. And the shipper said, that's why they said to contain. The shipper said that it contains so many number of packages and types of packages and what have you. All right. So that's one way the carrier says, I don't know. They said, and then I put it in the contract. And when I put it in the contract, I said that they said it. I didn't say that I know. I said they said. So I put it there. Another thing the carrier does to remove itself from liability is by using notations such as shippers, load, store, and count. So again, the carrier is declaring in this legal document called a contract that I don't know. The shipper has loaded it, has counted and stored the stuff in the container. So what I'm trying to say is um, the carrier will do every, and in fact, not just the carrier, any of us that are under the liability trap, which means if you're a service provider, you're not the owner of the cargo. You didn't buy marine insurance for cargo coverage. You're buying marine insurance for your liability coverage. So every one of us that fall under the liability trap will do everything in our power, which is legal and lawful, to remove ourselves from that liability. So the carriers do multiple things. I showed you also when we went through the SOLAS convention just now. I showed you in the documentation regulation 4 of SOLAS chapter 7 part A. SOLAS clearly states that you must have a transport declaration form for dangerous goods. That means the multimodal dangerous goods form. And then SOLAS says also that every vehicle or container that is packed with dangerous goods has to be accompanied by a CPC, a container packing certificate, or a vehicle packing certificate. And that these documents must be made available to whichever party that requests them. We see in East Malaysia, the request is coming from the carrier. We see in Semenanjung, Malaysia, especially for volumes out of Port Klang, the request is coming from the port authority, not the carrier. And in fact, I believe in Penang, is there anybody in this room that is from Penang? I think in Penang, they don't even ask you for the CPC, if I am not mistaken. Also in Kuantan, they don't ask you for the CPC. And let's see, yeah, none of those ports actually. Anyone from Kuantan, Penang? No? No, right. But I can pretty much, because I do my runs in Penang and in Kuantan and all that, and they have not yet started this system. So
I think Sabah and Sarawak also have not
yeah,
started.
only Labuan, and Labuan also just recently, and
No,
Bintulu had started.
Labuan is about 3 years already.
Because Bintulu Port took over, right? It's the
No,
Bintulu Port Authority people, the authorities.
Prior to Bintulu Port took over,
Or already
Port
started.
started before the Bintulu Port took over, because I think Singapore started
The shipping
requesting
lines,
for
so it's not the port
it.
authority, it's the shipping
It wasn't
lines,
the
right?
Port Authority. Yeah. The Port
It's the
Authority,
shipper
like last year,
only started. I know that. They
only
started
last
talking.
year, they only started talking because last year they started, last year they talked about wanting the document, but this year they really went all out because they wanted to collect money.
Okay. Yo, Amma, what this world has come down to. Anyways, yeah. So yeah, coming back to the point I was trying to make, meaning to say that the authorities are not really controlling this document at all. The only authority we know that's controlling it is our LPK, and that's because it is one of our main ports, and it's kind of embarrassing if we don't comply stuff coming out or going out of our ports. So,
I think we started because of Singapore as well.
But
Because
then also
Singapore,
it's not the port authority, Prunella. It is the shipping lines that are doing it. And let me explain why, okay? The shipping lines are doing that. So you also have, I think for those of you who have been doing DG for a long time, like Prunella, you've been handling DG. Prior to the multimodal dangerous goods form, the one that you see on the screen now, you see this form? Prior to this, actually what they were doing is they were using a normal IMO declaration form. And the IMO declaration form was purely a dangerous goods declaration form that only had one function. It was declaring the dangerous goods that was packed in the container, the quantity, the type, and all that normal standard information related to the dangerous goods, but it did not take on the role as a container packing certificate. It was purely a declaration form. But over time, that has changed in a sense that now all carriers are telling you to use this form, the multimodal dangerous goods form. Now, when we look at the multimodal dangerous goods form, yeah, this one, you can see that this form is not just a dangerous goods declaration form, that this form is also a container packing certificate, because you can see at this portion here, they put their container vehicle packing certificate. And this is where the CPC surveyor is supposed to fill up the information and sign it. Whereas this is the haulage information. That means who is the haulier, the truck number, the haulage truck number, and the signature of the driver, because technically dangerous goods can only be driven by trained people, all right, and in specific vehicles. And then this portion here is where the forwarding agent gets involved. So in the multimodal dangerous goods form that carriers are starting to use now, has now got the CPC content incorporated. Okay, so the CPC, why do they have this? Simply because maybe some ports are not controlling the CPC document. And not just that, because remember, the most important thing is when something becomes a rule. In SOLAS, they put there specifically container packing certificate. So when SOLAS indicates that in their guideline, in their provisions of the convention, then all the countries that have signed the SOLAS convention, because it would be the same countries that are approving the ship. We call ships also flag ships. That means where was it registered, in which IMO, NCA has registered it, National Competent Authority of IMO of which country has registered it. So ships comply by the SOLAS, ports comply by the SOLAS. So when the ships comply by the SOLAS, and the SOLAS specifically says the CPC, then it becomes the responsibility under negligence, because when it comes to liability, you have to prove negligence to show that somebody is liable of causing damage or whatever. So whenever that happens, what happens is, in order to protect yourself, what you would do is you will incorporate that information into a document so as to protect yourself. So by the carriers using a declaration form that is combined with a container packing certificate, what they're doing is they are making sure before the shipper tenders the goods to them that they have also fulfilled the CPC portion of the requirement. So it's fine. It is fine if the shipper signs this. Okay, if you are a freight forwarder, it becomes a bit of an issue in a multimodal dangerous goods form when you have opened the BL with the main carrier. Then you become the shipper here. And then you become the party that signs this. And then you have, although in multimodal dangerous goods forms, you only see one party signing it. Right? So like in East Malaysia, now the carriers are asking you to fill up a container packing certificate. And when the carriers issue the container packing, ask you to fill up the container packing certificate, what I understand from y'all is they're asking you to use a specific format, right? And does the format look anything like this form? Does it look like this? Where you have to
No.
tick some information and it gives you this terms and conditions. So does anyone have this form on them right now that you can attach it here in our chat so I can see it? Because I'd like to see what exactly is it that they are asking you all to fill there. Ada ke? Tak ada. Ada, tak ada. Do you have any prunella on you? Okay, she's, I think, engaged. Mala, do you have anything different? Because Mala, your moves are out of Port Klang, right?
No, we never get such a declaration form as such.
But your
Usually
moves, yours is all out of Port Klang, kan?
yes.
So you got nothing. Yours is a LPK requirement. That is a different story. I just want to
Is it like
understand it. I want to see the East Malaysia perspective because they are getting the request for CPC from shipping lines. And Prunella indicated just now that the shipping lines have their own format. So I just wanted to check and see how that format looks like.
Let me see and attach. I see in my emails I have attached to you.
Okay, all right. So until such time, coming back to this, okay. So when the carrier incorporates this, because this is the document that is used now, am I right to say the rest of you who are like Mala, you are declaring as well, like, right, Mala?
yes,
So you are using a document like this, right, to declare it?
yes.
All right. Anybody else here declaring DG in our class today? Apart from, because I know Prunella does, I know
ஜெகா எனக்கு வந்து JNT ல இருந்து ஒரு pass.
somebody has got their speaker on and I can actually hear them talking to someone else. I think it's nobody else declares. Michael, Avi, you don't declare. Sichan, you don't declare. None of you all declare.
Yeah, I declare DG for my shipments.
You
I
also.
declare DG.
All right. So is this the form? Like, okay, when you're Aiman, you're in East Malaysia, right? In Labuan itself, right? So yours is
Yes.
same situation as Prunella's. The shipping line will provide the CPC, yes?
Yes, I guess so. Yeah.
Or they are not aware of that, lah.
Yeah, but the one they provided to me is different from this.
So
From
it's
this
not
one.
this, right?
Yes.
They don't use a multimodal dangerous goods form.
No.
So you see, where is Prunella? Where are you? So if they are not using this form, Prunella, are they using this form, Prunella? Or is it a different? You got to release your mic.
Aiman, yours
Aiman.
is
Yep.
yours is through DGF, isn't it? Harbor.
Yes.
Yeah, Harbor
DGF.
I do lah.
No wonder lah, he doesn't. So Prunella, then we go back to Prunella. Okay, Aiman.
There are two forms. There are two forms. One
So
is this form.
they do this and then, so they
This
use,
is the one.
so they
This
do
is the one
use
that we use. Yes,
uh,
this is the one that we use. Where, right, at the end of the day, I prepare and I do inspected by, but there's another column where the shipper actually has to sign.
Up here.
Because we are only doing the CPC only.
Yeah, up here, right? This is where the shipper signs. Yeah.
Yes.
This
So
so
the
this
shipper
is
has to
so
sign.
so the carriers are using this form. There is no other form for
No,
CPC,
but there's
right?
another form. There's another form
Mm.
that is almost similar to what I'm trying to look for that form. But my girl has just gone out for
No,
lunch.
it's okay. So let me just ask. So they use that other form just to check with you all. They may be using that other form when they don't use this multimodal DG form.
No, we submit this one, then they'll tell you to fill up another form.
Ayyo, jokers lah. Because if, for instance, they make you do that, then they're just making you do double work the way I see it.
Yes.
All right. Oh,
Yes.
Jane, you
The
sent me something.
other
Jane.
form is like there's so many columns and you just select one. So if you have like 3-4 items, again, that form is like kind of specifically covers. It doesn't cover. You remember I told you about the engine? Okay. It doesn't talk about engines or anything. It just talks about the products that is the chemical format in the receptacles.
Oh, okay, all right. That one, I suppose, is when you have engines with these chemicals, right?
So when you have engines, there's nothing to explain, isn't it?
Yeah.
Engine. Yeah. So they will come and big issue, hoo-ha on the whole thing, things like that.
All right. Anyways, what Jane has shared with us here. Now, Jane, what you have given me is the first declaration. That means before you actually get the acceptance of booking from the shipping line. Am I right, Jane?
Yes.
Yeah, so this is actually the first process where when you declare, the shipping lines will either have this document emailed to you and then you fill up the information, or they might ask you to go to some portal of theirs and fill this information up. So this is the first form of declaration that we make to the carrier when we are tendering the shipment, where you can see they will ask you questions like what kind of packaging is it IBC, is it a large package, is it packed in LQ? I think this is what LQ means, whether there's a flash point for it, or whether it's an accepted quantity. Why your consignment was in accepted quantity, why you tick this here. Okay, and then whether it's a marine pollutant or not. All right, so this doesn't look like accepted quantities because I can look at your
Yeah,
20
Mashma, that's
liter.
why I come for the class because I want to understand
Okay,
more, you
fine,
see.
fine, 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 fine. Accepted. This so here also you will notice, right? I see here the carrier didn't ask this. So what I wanted to tell you guys was sometimes when you are here in this part and you're declaring to the carrier will tell you when, okay, here they ask you for the PSN, right? What the product is, and then the UN number, that hazard class, subsidiary risk, all that. And then they will ask you on the packaging. So here they will put the inner package and then you put the outer package. Sometimes what the carrier will do is they will ask you to indicate the UN packing approval code right here, the first characters of the code. I guess the point I'm trying to make in this 15-20 minutes of discussing this thing is that the carrier does everything to protect itself from liabilities. When the rule tells you that you need a CPC to be accompanied with the dangerous goods, what the carriers have started is they've started incorporating the CPC portion into the multimodal dangerous goods form. So they protect themselves in that sense, saying that they have already informed the shipper that the shipper has to follow these conditions. Yeah, which is doing an interior, exterior inspection, generally doing all the audits of a CPC before signing the document. Another thing is what Jane just showed us just now, which is the initial declaration that is made to the carrier in order to get the approval, whether they accept the booking or not. In that, sometimes what they do is they make you indicate the UN packing approval code here. If it's a 4G, they'll tell you to put 4G. If it's a 1A1, they'll tell you to put a 1A1, even though if the package is not UN approved. Because I understand from a lot of our CPCs that sad, more than 50% of the DG that moves out of our ports are not in UN approved packages. And these are the CPCs in Port Klang telling me this, okay? So when you declare this information, you put 1A1 or 4G or whatever, you are now telling the carrier that you have followed that part of it. So if, for instance, anything happens to this cargo, the carrier is very well protected because the carrier has already shown all this information out to you to show you that it is following the CPC requirements. I see some of you have given me the LPK CPC form. Okay, fine. Thank you very much. I can share it with the rest of you. And I also got another declaration from Baizura. Baizura, I will see if I can open it. I'm having some issues with this computer of mine to open Word documents. I don't know, it has to go for some kind of fix. But let's look at I don't know who sent me the LPK CPC. So this is the CPC that is used in Port Klang. Oh, Jane, you sent it to me. All right. So a CPC, now this ours is controlled by the Port Authority. All right. But I guess the point I'm trying to make to you guys is not so much to take a look at the CPC, but to communicate one thing to you, that even if there is no CPC involved, that means nobody asked you, nor the carrier, nor the Port Authority, nobody, understand that the CPC principles and what is within the CPC has already been incorporated in the multimodal dangerous goods form, which is part of the contract to the carrier. All right, so the carrier protects itself in this way. When you declare also to accept booking, you have to mention the UN packing approval code. Carriers do ask for it. So again, the carrier is protecting itself, saying that I've asked and they've declared it on the contract that this thing is actually using a UN approved package. And if you are not using it and there is an accident, then you can imagine the penalty that would be on you. Right? As that means the party that signed the CPC and the party that signed the document there, who appears to be the shipper. Because what you're doing is you're indicating all the steps of the CPC has been undertaken before you lodge the shipment or uplifted the shipment onto the carrier. All right. And when we declare, remember that the information is very important for us to indicate the flash point. If the flash point of the substance is less than 60 degrees, that information must be provided to the carrier, because you, like I mentioned, I believe in day one, the shipping lines, their principal offices are never at the same place where you are loading the cargo. Not always. So if it happens to be like, you know, Shenyang, and your load port is Miri, then the principal office is there, right? I think Shenyang's principal office is in Miri. So, but let's say if it's like a double OCL or something, their principal offices are in different countries altogether. And it's the principal office that does the stowage planning. So if you do not mention the flash point, then chances are they might store this container close to where there are sources of ignition. And that will then become a big issue because you did not declare that information and it was wrongly stored, and that the vessel and the whoever was on that voyage has suffered the consequences of your negligence. So when it's negligence, it can be very painful in terms of the penalties. Okay, so take note that the information on flashpoint plus marine pollutant must be indicated. Another thing is the sequencing. So if we were to look at this same UN number, I'm going to bring the camera now again closer to the whiteboard. Okay. So if we were referring to this same UN number now, this UN push my bed. Okay, so I can show you properly. You see that 1244? So if we had, for instance, and I want to make this explicitly clear in terms of declaration, because you have a lot of declaring questions in your subjective portion of your exam as well. And honestly, we're not just learning for the exam, we're learning so that we follow and we are in compliance with the IMDG code. So when we look at UN 1244, and 1244 has got multiple risks, and assuming, because the packing instruction is a P602, I believe, but I'm just going to bantai the packaging for just practice purposes. And then assuming I have 50 steel drums of this 1244. All right, I have to indicate, for instance, each steel drum has got 200 liters in it. The carrier might ask me to indicate, when I say steel drums, what is the UN packing approval code for it. So I want to tell them that they are steel, non-removable head drums, and each drum contains 200 liters of that UN 1244. Now I start the sequencing. So the sequencing is very, 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 very important. You cannot see what I'm writing, yeah? Hang on. Now only I notice you cannot see what I'm writing. There you go. So the sequencing starts with UN 1244, and then you will indicate the PSN, where it is methyl hydrazine, isn't it? I've got to open the book again to see this. Is it methyl hydrazine? Tomorrow I will be back in office. Life will be, yeah, methyl hydrazine. So methyl hydrazine, and then you indicate the class information. So the main hazard is a 6.1, and then the sub-hazards, you will put them in brackets, okay? And this 1244 is actually a PG1. If you look at the DGL, you will see it's a PG1 for this 1244. But there's also a class 3 here. So if there's a class 3, there is something that I may need to communicate to the carrier, right? What do you think I need to communicate to the carrier?
Flashpoint.
Flashpoint. So we don't have an SDS, because if we had an SDS, where would we be looking at?
DGL.
The DGL column?
The packing group.
We look at column 17 in the DGL.
Yes, yes.
So when you go to column 17, they give you an idea. They say the flashpoint is 20 degrees Celsius. So there you go, 20 degrees Celsius CC. So always remember when you declare is the sequencing, the 1, the 2, the 3, the 4, and the 5. And if the consignment happens to be a class 3, then the flashpoint information must come. If the consignment happens to be a marine pollutant, then after the PG, you will indicate the word marine pollutant to indicate that it's a marine pollutant. So the sequencing is very important, and the information communication is very, very important. Fail to inform is misrepresentation of information, which has very serious consequences, because it means you are breaching the terms of the contract or the principles of contract, which is utmost good faith. So when you don't tell them something, that means you're not being honest to them. Okay, so marking and labeling. So if I were to give you an exercise, okay.
Rashma,
Yes.
the area where you have the gross mass, okay, where you have the gross mass and the net mass.
Oh,
Just
you
to
mean in the, yes, I remember that issue that you were having that day. I won't forget
in
that.
the declaration. Now, if it's a fixed chemical by drums or by pellets or bags or whatever it is, it's fully that product itself,
Yeah.
then you don't have issue, correct? But
Yeah.
if you have you have a vehicle, you have a car, personal effects gets transferred. The only DG would be the lithium battery, and I mean not the lithium battery, but
The fuel.
vehicle battery and the fuel.
Mm.
Now, the gross mass and the net mass, what would that constitute? Is it constitute just the product itself?
No, okay. So when you are talking about declaring it on the multimodal dangerous goods form or the CPC, right? Because
Yes.
here you are declaring, you're declaring the vehicle as DG simply because you're packing it into a container, correct or not?
Yeah,
Right?
under class 9.
Under class 9, exactly. And in that container, not all of the products are DG. Right, it's probably just these 1-2 items that happen to be DG, and hence you have to declare a multimodal dangerous goods form. So when you are declaring the net weight in this sense, because this is unpackaged cargo, right or not? Yeah, and it doesn't make sense, for instance, for you to declare the fuel that is in there. I mean, you can take the net quantity of the active ingredients and give it to them and explain it to them that I have only so much fuel, because if you look at 961, I think 961 allows you to have up to 450 liters. Am I right?
Uh-huh.
If you look at SP 961, you're looking at 3166, right? The UN number that you're looking at?
I think we used to use 3166, correct?
Yeah.
But there's a new one that goes for cars, correct?
No, car is 3166. Only engines have a new one.
Ah, okay.
So if it is an engine, then it's a different story, lah. So if you're looking at engines, right? So engine is what, the 35 something, right?
Yeah.
Let me go open that up first. So when it's an engine, then your gross weight will be the engine and the net weight would be the engine without the substance in it, and the gross weight will be with the substance in it. Because I believe you still have, are you looking at 3529, is it? This is flammable gas, flammable. I think you're looking at flammable liquid. 3528 or 3529, one of those.
3528 and 3529, because sometimes we do have gas,
Yeah.
gas turbines, correct? So it will be 3528 or 3529.
Okay.
But either one is that because you have flammable gas powered,
Yeah.
right?
So say, assuming it's a flammable gas, let's just pick one, okay? So we can talk about that. So when we look at this, like, let's say we take 3529, which is an engine that has a fuel cell and also has flammable gas powered. Can I say it's that, right?
Yes.
So we take this one. And then when we come to this one, we have to look at the SPs here. Because the SPs will talk about certain things pertaining to its packaging and may also explain a little more information to us. So if you don't mind, we just look at this SP. I mean, we should both all read it. Okay, this entry may only be used when the condition of these special provisions are met, no other provisions of the code except 972. So 972 also happens to be one of the SPs here. Okay, and 972 is talking about lithium batteries. So can I assume your engine also has lithium batteries, lithium cells?
Some have, some
don't have.
It's just
Okay, so we first focus on 363, right? So in 363, they tell us blah blah blah, and they talk about the lithium battery thingy. This entry applies to engines or machineries that are powered by fuels classified as dangerous via their internal combustion systems or fuel cells. So unless they told you those are vehicles, so this is vehicle 3166 or 3363, because 3363 is your, just check what 3363 is. (3363) is dangerous goods in machinery or in apparatuses. Then they say you can't use this. Engines or machineries which are empty of liquid or gaseous fuels and which do not contain any DG. So this is not the code to use if it's an empty machinery of no fuel in it, or if it falls under 3166 or 3363. Then they tell you the engine or machinery is considered to be empty of fuel, and they explain what that means. And then they tell you here, they tell you in note 2, an engine or machinery is considered to be empty again when they refer to gases. And then here they talk about what does it mean. Engines and machinery containing fuels meeting the classification criteria of 3 shall be consigned under 3528. So they are talking about the different fuels and where should you actually put it in to identify whether you use 3529 or 3528 and which of the right PSNs to use. Okay. and go down. And then here they tell you the capacities of the engines. Also the capacities of the engines are still going on. Nothing talking about how much it should contain. So which means I will go now here to P005, and then maybe P005 will give me some clarity here. If the engine or engine is constructed, designed so that it meets the containment of there. So here they are talking about outer packaging. So now when I remember Prunella, your case had no packaging, right? It was an unpackaged engine. And you wanted to know how do I declare the gross and the net weight, and we were both trying to figure out how to do that. At the end of the day, even I didn't come to a resolve. I told you to put the same weight for gross and net, because anyways, this engine would have a very small limited quantity, right? Based on 363, where they tell you how much how much can be contained of that engine. See, not more than 450.
Yeah.
Yeah, we use this, right? We're using this SP on it. So when we're using this SP on it, we don't need to actually tell them, because a net and gross weight comes into view when you have an outer package, an external package that your product or article sits under. But if it is unpackaged, then the net or the gross weight will be exactly the same, because you will not be exercising SP 363 in the first place, because what SP 363 is exercising, it says that, see, this entry may only be used, you're saying that I'm using this entry because I fulfill these conditions where they indicate how much the engine has. But notwithstanding, you can still declare, meaning to say you will know at the end of the day also exactly how much fuel or gas the engine has. You can declare that separately, not necessarily in the gross or net, or you can put in the net column, put it in brackets saying fuel content of so much. So, you know, they can then make some sense out of it.
Okay. Now, if we go back to 363, number 1, 2, and the note number 1. Okay. It says that in the note number 1, an engine or machinery is considered to be empty of liquid fuel when the liquid fuel tank has been drained and the engine or machinery cannot be operated due to a lack of fuel. Engine or machinery components such as fuel lines, fuel filters do not need to be cleaned, drained, or purged to be considered as empty. And the fuel tank does not need to be cleaned or purged. So if you think about it, all you do is, if you go to 3, it just says it can go to either one of those classes.
Yeah. What do you
So
mean?
we
If
just
you mean when you come to 3, the 3 is describing to you exactly which PSN, if like, which class and PSN you should use. Like for instance, if it's liquid powered, then you would use this, right? 3528, because it's a class 3. And if it's gas powered, then you would use these ones. So that's what this one is saying.
Yeah. But it doesn't need to be, what it also says is that it doesn't need to be purged clean. So that
It
means as
doesn't,
long
it
as
just needs to be empty there.
Empty, that's all.
That's all.
Yeah.
Which is empty.
So,
and how do they define empty? That means you start the ignition, it ignites, but it cannot move. That's what they mean by empty. Yeah.
So in that particular case is that environment hazard does not come into place.
You mean if the fuel that they are using is an environmental hazard, is it?
Yeah.
No, if it is empty, it isn't.
No hazard.
If it is empty, it isn't.
I mean,
see, let's look at 5. I see environment. I suddenly see environment in number 5.
Yes,
Engines and machinery containing liquid fuels meeting the classification criteria of 2.9.3 and not meeting the classification carriers of any other class or division. That means you're using an engine oil that has no other class other than a class 9, like probably a 3082, shall be consigned under entries of 3530 engine internal combustion or 3530 machineries internal combustion as appropriate. So here they're telling you if you happen to be using a fuel in this engine, which is probably the grease or the engine oil, that is not a flammable gas or a flammable liquid, but is a marine pollutant, then they are indicating the UN number and the PSNs that are appropriate for that situation. That's about it.
Yeah.
So if your engine happens to use one of those fuels and it's empty, then it goes here as opposed to the class 3 or a class 2.1. That means it is not a class 3 or a class 2.1. It's just a class 9. That's all that is, lah. That's it.
Yeah. So we're back to 3166.
Okay.
Right? So you are back to 3166, which normally will have some fuel.
3166 is on the same premise. So 3166 here, let me show you. In 3166, the premise of empty is exactly the same as what you read just now. All right. So here, so vehicles are not subject to the provisions of the code if they follow these conditions. One is if the vehicle is carried on a ro-ro ship. 2 is if the vehicle uses diesel, because the flash point here is above 38 degrees. So the condition is no leaks in 3 leaks, and the fuel tank has 450 liters or less. When it comes to 38 degrees Celsius and below, that means if you're using petroleum, then it must be empty. So what does empty mean? The same story. If you read it, empty installed batteries are protected. Vehicles are considered to be empty when the fuel tank has been drained and the vehicle cannot be operated due to lack of fuel. Engine components such as fuel lines, filters, blah, blah, blah. No need to be cleaned, drained, or purged. So it's the same thing. So if you use a vehicle and it's empty, you exercise 961. But if your question is about the net weight and gross weight related to this question, it's also unpackaged, right? Nobody is packing a motorcycle or a car. So you will put the gross and net weight in there. And since
Gross
it is
net weight of the car or the expected fuel?
no, because empty ma, if it's petrol, it has to be empty. So there's no way for you to gauge how much there is because it's empty. So the gross and the net weight of the car will now be the same.
So there's no, so you take the weight of the car, not the weight
fuel.
of the,
because
not
if
the
you're
fuel.
exercising 961 and you're saying that my car is empty of petroleum or empty,
but generally it's not empty. It's like it has got, it will normally have at least half a bar.
Which is wrong lah. Then you cannot exercise 961.
Because otherwise they can't push the car into the vehicle. I mean to the container. Or drive
Yeah,
in.
they're supposed to use manual labor and push the car out.
Correct.
Push it out. Because that's what this means. This means that what 961 is technically telling you is shouldn't be able to drive it out also.
If we see 962, can we use 962?
Yeah, so 962 is if you cannot meet 961 and your flammable liquid. You see, for flammable liquids, powered vehicle tanks containing the flammable liquid shall not be more than 1/4 full. In any case, the flammable liquid should not exceed 250 liters, but it must be approved by your competent authority.
Yeah. So that means basically we can use, we assign it to class 9, but we use 962.
As long as you got CA approval to use 962. So because the reason we are exercising this 961, 962 is so that we can remove that product from DG qualification.
Yeah.
That's the whole purpose.
But the thing is we generally know that unless it's a new car, even then the new car has fuel. Oh, no, you know, it has certain amount of fuel.
Yeah, I know, but
So,
when you see that when you are talking about the legalities, right? I'm going to quote the book because that's the way it is. The book says this. The book says that if you cannot use 961, that means you still need to have some fuel for the purpose that you mentioned just now. As long as it's not 250 liters, it's fine. You can exercise 962 and remove it as a DG as long as your CA has given you an approval for it. So at the end of the day, you've got to obtain the CA approval for this, which is Marine Department lah.
yeah.
Hmm.
But in the book, it says it's just assign it to class 9 now.
No, you can, of course, it will go in class 9, meaning that all 3166 will go under class 9. But the question here we are saying is, can we remove it from class 9 or not? Because that's what this 961, 962 is saying, is to take it out of DG altogether. That means it's no longer DG. So to exercise 961 or 962, right? Like you
9,
say, yeah? Sorry?
yeah. 962 is definitely assigned as DG lah.
No, even 962, because 962 says if you cannot meet 961, then you assign it to class 9, okay? But with that, that means to say that, yeah, it's still, yeah, you're right, it's still DG. Meaning to say
Yeah.
that if you can't hit 961, then you are class 9 DG. Shall be assigned to class 9 and shall meet the following requirements. And it falls under class 9, but yet with a CA approval. Why would you need a CA approval? Already DG ma. So no need CA approval in this sense. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Any more questions or not? Do we have any other questions with relating to, say, container packing certificate? Because after this, I'm going to continue with the safety data sheet. Okay.
I know why you talk about you need a CA, competent authority, if it is lithium battery. So if it's not lithium battery, then it's okay.
No, that is point 4. Point 2 already asked you for CA approval without referring to lithium battery. Point 4 talks about lithium battery. Anyway, I think we'll be boring everybody else right now. So we continue this, Prunella, you and I, on a separate note, right? And anyone wants more information on this, you can check with me. All right, if you have these instances. Now to continue with the session, I'm going to continue with safety data sheet, and I'm going to run a little bit on safety data sheet so that you know the proper columns to look into when you refer to the safety data sheet. Okay, so this safety data sheet is governed under the Purple Book, the Global Harmonized System. And the purpose of the or what asks for it, that means what law tells the manufacturer or shipper that they need to produce a safety data sheet, is the Global Harmonized System, this Purple Book. And this Purple Book or the Global Harmonized System has actually become now part of our national law under the OSHA's Act. Meaning that under the OSHA's Act, we have to, manufacturers have to classify the dangerous substances that they are producing to be handled and transported. And they have to communicate that in two methods. One is with the issuance of a safety data sheet, and the second is by using hazard pictograms. And these hazard pictograms look like this. All right, they are different from our transport symbols. In the transport symbols, it's colorful and pictograms aren't, but they're communicating pretty much the same hazards, but they don't interchange each other. Meaning to say, if the drum comes marked and labeled from the factory, and you notice the label is this for a class 3, this is not acceptable, right? It has to have the class 3 label, transport label on it. And along with the GHS pictograms, manufacturers also communicate everything pertaining to the substance that they have manufactured in a 16 section format document called the safety data sheet. And one of the things that they communicate in that, especially in section number 2, which is the hazard identification section of the SDS, they would give us hazard communications using these pictograms, because what these pictograms are generally telling us are the type of hazards they represent. And along with these pictograms, you would see also hazard categories, right? Where category 1, category 2, 3, and 4 is indicated. And what these category generally means are one being extremely flammable liquid or vapor, 2 being highly flammable, 3 being flammable, and 4 being combustible liquids. So this is giving you the degree of danger using categories, not packing groups. If you see it in the global harmonized system in terms of hazard communication. And these 16 sections is now when a product is produced by a manufacturer in Malaysia, and that manufacturer intends to ship out the goods, then that manufacturer has to produce SDS. So it doesn't mean, like, say, for instance, it's BSF. And BSF is virtually all around the world. And BSF Malaysia is shipping out a product. Say the product happens to be, and I'm just going to use any UN number in this sense, it happens to be a 2439, which is a sodium hydroglycerol fluoride, something like that, okay? And when they produce this cargo and they ship it out, although maybe BSF in another country is also producing a similar product for their market region there, it does not mean that the BSF Malaysia can use that BSF different countries SDS for a move from Malaysia to another country. What needs to be, how it has to happen is BSF Malaysia itself has to issue its own SDS. That means send the substances to the labs that have been approved by our OGAs, our government agencies, and author and publish a safety data sheet that is from Malaysia. So you cannot use international safety data sheets for a local, that means for a movement from Malaysia will require a safety data sheet from Malaysia. All right. And the safety data, yes, I know there was going to be a question from this statement that I made. Yes.
No. But a lot of the chemicals are not, I mean, they're not produced in Malaysia. It comes somewhere else. It's
No, a
used
lot
here.
is produced here also.
I know,
What
but
is produced in Malaysia should have its own SDS. What
yeah,
is produced in a different country will have theirs, because the SDS must originate from the shipper's country. And that's the global harmonized system.
correct. So if take for example now that the product is stored here and it has to be sent elsewhere. So you still
You mean
use
as
the
a
origin.
trader, right? As a trader.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if it is tranche, that means you have established a distribution network or whatever, and the products are only in transit, and they're going to another country. Then yes, you can use the origin country, because the country that it is in now is an in-transit country. But that also depends on the carrier, if the carrier accepts it.
Okay.
Okay, otherwise it won't. Like I give you an example with the air condition guys,
I have a
Daikin.
question here.
So
Okay,
yeah,
let's
Jane.
say, yeah, if we are doing the trading, right? If we disclose the origin MSDS, that actually will tell where they purchase from. But this is the mass, right? We cannot change this to hours and assign it to a consignee.
Not if you're a trader. Not
Mm,
if you're a trader. So if you are a trader and you are importing something, right, into the country, are you exporting the same stuff that you import?
yes.
Yeah, and it's exactly the same. You have not changed its form. You have not mixed it or done anything to it.
there is two form. One is the origin, whatever they pack. The second, we repack it to our packaging, you know, like a drums or pill.
Okay, so you just repackage, but you don't mix, blend, or do anything,
Oh,
right? Then
oh,
you use the origin SDS because you're doing nothing to the product,
all right.
right? You're only a trading arm. But if you were doing something like, I give you one example, and this is Daikin, you know, the air conditioned people. So air conditioned units or so are not considered DG unless they are the industrial types. When they are in the industrial sizes, there's a certain amount of the cooling gas that is in this in the compressors of this air conditioning that then makes it into a dangerous article of dangerous goods. So it became a problem about what, 2 or 3 years ago, where carriers started asking for safety data sheet from Daikin Malaysia for those industrial air conditions that they were exporting out. So what they were initially doing, because they didn't have, I mean, who would have a safety data sheet for a air condition, right? You'll have a safety data sheet of the gas that is put in the air conditioning to cool, you know, in the compressor. But for the whole AC unit itself, you won't have one. And at that point of time, they didn't even have a safety data sheet for that gas itself. So what they were doing was they were using the Japanese one because the gas is the same gas. It has not changed. It's the exact same gas. So they used Daikin Japan safety data sheet, and many of the carriers rejected it. They did not accept it. Especially they had an issue when that consignment went to the States, because one carrier actually accepted the foreign safety data sheet, the Japanese safety data sheet. But when the consignment was about to reach US, the Coast Guards didn't allow it to be discharged simply because it originated from Malaysia and it did not have a Malaysian safety data sheet. So that cargo had to come back all over again. Just to explain to you that, you know, in certain circumstances, you will need it. But when you are trading, you may not need it. As a trader, you don't need, but then subject to carrier again. Okay. So the safety data sheets have these 16 sections, and I'll run them very fast. Okay. Identification of hazards, chemicals, and the supplier. So here they will give you generally the trade name of the substance, the recommended users of the substance, and any other means of identifying it. And one of the most important thing is the supplier's contact and 24/7 number. That means if any emergency, this is the number. So that is the reason why they expect the safety data sheets to originate from the person who has prepared the product, right? The manufacturer of the product. In section 2 is where the hazard identification takes place. So for liquid paper is the trade name. This is the use, the company. The hazard identification, these are the hazard pictograms. This is the category classification that we saw earlier on, all right? And any precautionary statements. This is where the composition comes in. That means they will indicate the active ingredients in percentages. They don't tell the exact value because otherwise it's proprietary. This is a public document, so percentages are indicated here, and in this part is the first aid measures. So here for this liquid paper, they tell you it has methyl cyclohexane and 10 to 20% of it, and they give you the CAS number, and also has N-hexane, and they tell you the percentage of it, and of course the first aid measures. Now I'm going to move from all of this because this firefighting teaches you on the media and the PPE required. The accidental release is when you spill it or when it escapes if it's gas. And this is for your conditions of storage and handling. And these are the exposure controls. That means every product will have a specific level that is the permissible level of release. And when it exceeds it, what are the control measures and what are the PPEs that need to be employed in order to address it when it goes above these emergency controls. So when you look at liquid paper, the firefighting, I'm going to push off fast, not necessary for us to look at that. But in the conditions of handling and transport, they give you some general guidelines on being proactive and occupational hygiene and safe storage guidelines right here. In this, they are talking about the US. This product, the SDS, is an American SDS. So they're giving you the emergency or the allowable levels of exposure or release of these substances over a period of time. So if it's exceeding that, that means you're releasing more than the control parameters. And then they tell you how do you address it when it goes above the parameters. Now, this is a very important section we need very, very much to look at before we look at section, or apart from looking at section 14. So this is the section that indicates the test results of the substance when it was tested in the lab. So if it is a class 3, it would indicate flash point, boiling point. It would give us probably pH, and it would also give us vapor pressure, okay, and relative densities as well. And if it's very viscose, then the viscosity information will be given here. If it is a flammable solid, we'll see there's auto ignition temperatures indicated. All right. Also, for solids and gases, the flammability information will be given here as well. Now, when we look at this liquid paper, the correction fluid, they indicate the physical properties of it, and then the chemical properties are indicated: the boiling point, the flash point, the evaporation rate, the relative density indicated, and they're also telling us whether it's soluble or insoluble in water. So like if you want to understand these things, I have the physical and chemical properties in one of, I think in part 2 sections. Please go through that because that explains what all this means to you. When we come to now, of course, this is the toxicological information to indicate whether this is a poisonous substance or not. The ecological information tells us whether it's an environment or a marine pollutant. And 13, disposal information advises how would you safely dispose of this substance. So when you look at the liquid paper, they are giving us information of its LCs, its lethal concentration levels and its lethal dosage levels of the substances based on the dose and exposure time, right? And when we look at the ecological information, it will tell us what species will be, would this be a hazard to over how much the period of time, right? And this is for the environment, the marine environment, bioaccumulation levels. 14 is transport, 15 is regulatory information, 16 is basically every other information in terms of when it was prepared and who prepared it. So when we look at transportation information, we need to focus on the mode that is relevant to us. Because of the section related to its bioaccumulation, its ecological information, we actually, by looking at that, I knew it was a marine pollutant already. All right, so here we will look at the UN, the PSN, and when the PSN is an NOS, we will be looking at the technical name of the substance. And since it's a class 3, we will then go to section 9 to determine the flash point, because that is what we would have to declare of the substance. So that pretty much tells you on safety data sheet. So I have a couple of exercises here where I have asked you to mark and label. So here, a package that contains UN 1218 is to be transported by sea. Indicate how it should be marked and labeled. And the second is a truck. How should you placard this truck that has this UN 2012, right? And here you have a container that has 12 tons of 1993 and 2 tons of 3077 and 3 tons of 3082. How would you placard this? Right? So remember, in placarding, you also have to look at the one that has more than 4,000 kgs of a single UN number. What are the conditions in that? So you indicate that here. And then here I have given this safety data sheet for you to look at, this acetylene dissolved. And I said, using the SDS, declare the consignment containing 20 steel cylinders that have 150 liters of this product. So if you can finish this workshop, and I will also be adding some more stuff into the quiz sections of our portal, more to do with part 5 and part 6, and attempt these questions, and then tomorrow we will discuss how you have done it. You can either email it to me, because the only person, I'll be honest with you, that is doing everything very quickly and emailing it to me within the day is Prunella. I'm not getting it from anybody else. All right, I have to ask you all to send it. So please, and Mala also has been doing it very, very often. So thank you very much. Please, all of you also continue. Maybe send it to my email, Ajula. This is my email address. So I can check it. Like I received some from yesterday. I will be checking and emailing it back to you to show you where you got wrong or right, or what you have done incorrect. Please, can you not send in PDF? Send it in Word document. Because when it's PDF, very hard for me to do any edit to it. Okay? So try and use a Word document and email to me. So do you have any questions before we
Sorry,
end
ma'am.
today's? Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
sorry, ma'am. I couldn't find the part 5 attachment on the website. How do I go about